All right, I'd like to call to order the March 7th, 2022 special town council meeting. If we rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item number 4, public comment. Has there been any public comment submitted?
Roll call.
Roll call. Oh, roll call.
No. Roll call, please.
Aurelio,
Here.
Blazek,
Present.
Pondinas,
Here.
Sweats, Schilling,
Here.
and Clerk Treasurer Hernandez.
Item number 4, public comment. I don't see any public comment out there. Was there any emailed in?
None that I'm aware of.
And nobody's online.
Okay, item number 4, or item number 5 is the study session. This is to cover the American Rescue Plan Act money. Tonight we brought in our financial advisor here, and we'll go over some questions that we have, how the money can be spent.
And all that good stuff, and how much we have, and, okay.
Is your microphone on?
Now it is, thanks.
There you go.
Will you introduce yourself, please?
Sure, Trista Hudson from Senator Dalton Municipal Advisors. Steve Dalton is the person you've been in contact with the most thus far. I've been with their office about 2.5 years. I take that back, 2 years, 9 months about. So, quite a variety of experiences before that, but I don't think we need to get into all of that today, probably.
Not a problem.
Sounds good.
American Rescue Plan. My question first, before I just start blabbing, is what do you know already? A lot, a little? What have you done other than receive
I know a
the
little.
money?
Myself, very little.
Okay,
Probably the same for everybody.
all right, great.
And what can the money be used for?
Sure. So, of course, the federal government has made this money available. You have applied last calendar year, and received the first half of it to your account, and it should be sitting in a fund. I believe that I've seen it on your fund report from March 1st. So it is there. I was just trying to remember the amount of money
I believe it's 2.2 million.
for that, the first half,
First
right?
half.
Yeah.
The total is what, 3.9 we're supposed to get?
In that neighborhood, yes.
So the federal government set it up that a town or city, county as well, had to apply for it to start with, fill out a couple forms, and then it would be received in 2 halves. You've applied, you've received the first half. Check that off the list. The second half will come automatically because you have done the first application. You do not need to reapply. You just simply need to wait for that to pop to the bank. Originally, they told us it would be 12 months after the first receipt, and depending on when a city or town applied, dictated when they received the money. Some received it earlier than others. It is funneled through the state of Indiana, and the state was a little bit slow, though, in handing it out and making the deposits to your account. We're thinking that that second half may come a little sooner than 12 months. Because the state was slow to start with, there's no guarantee to that timing. But we know that you have to do nothing further. It will just simply come to you. There are 4 different categories that the money can be used for originally. And I say originally because there were some guidelines set out, and then the government goes through this listening session, questions, answers. They gather lots of questions from all over the place. AIM, for example, is involved in that. Representatives from our state house were involved. Cities and towns could send in their own questions to the federal government. And then whatever committee it is there in DC went through all of that to see if there were some things that they should change. The biggest change that they made, which made a lot of people happy, was expanding one of the categories. So originally, the 4 categories were response to COVID, whether it be economic, whether it be health related, healthcare related. That was one category. Another category could be premium pay, meaning if you had employees on the front lines interacting with the public a lot who were at higher risk of contracting the virus, you could increase the pay that they received. There's some limitations to it. That is still in place. All of the categories are still in place, but I'll get to in a minute why we can kind of maybe not have to focus on them. Some limitations with that premium pay are the total amount that an individual could receive being $25,000. You do have to go through a calculation to compare it to the median income for that particular job within the locality and within the state. So there's a lot that becomes involved in that. A third category is lost revenue, meaning any governmental service that you as the town council authorize money to be spent on for the operation of the government. It can include payroll. It can include capital items. It can include day-to-day operations, the various bills that you have that you authorize money to be spent on. So lost revenue, governmental services. Lost revenue originally was set up that we had to go through a calculation to see how much money, how much revenue the town did not receive once the pandemic hit. Maybe people weren't paying their property tax bills. Maybe people weren't paying a variety of other things. Or, for example, the town wasn't able to rent out a community room that you were able to collect revenue on. So all of these little things added up. Maybe the Parks Department wasn't able to operate their normal summer programming because of COVID. And so all of that lost revenue could add up, and we would come to a number and say, okay, this portion, maybe it's $1 million. The town of St. John did not receive during this first year of COVID. So now out of that $4 million you receive, $1 million can be used on lost revenue. That's the way it was originally set up. The fourth category was for infrastructure, a specific infrastructure, broadband, water, sewer, to help promote in some areas that were more economically depressed, be able to upgrade some of those quality of life type things that they couldn't normally afford to do. So those were the four. When the government then went through all these questions and answers, about a month ago or so, they released their final rule, their final decisions on how we're all supposed to operate. It becomes frustrating that that's 9 or 10 months after it started, but nonetheless, the good news about it is for all of the cities and towns who have received money, they can automatically, if they choose, up to $10 million, declare it all lost revenue category. So instead of having to say, we bought so many thousands of dollars worth of masks and hand sanitizer as a response to COVID, and part of our $4 million should be allotted in that category. And instead of saying, this is how much lost revenue we had and going through all the different funds and trying to figure all that out, just flat out, anyone who received $10 million or less, if they want to, can just say the whole thing is lost revenue, which is awesome because it gives you the freedom to use it basically however you want to on any kind of government service that you as a town council believe is a service for the town to provide its residents. You can spend the money on that. You don't have to relate it anymore to replacing some piping for clean water or trying to increase broadband in a neighborhood that is underprivileged. We don't have to go through the calculation of lost revenue at all. So all of those other things you don't have to do. You can if you want to. If there's a particular reason that you want to say we spent this allotment of our $4 million on a medical response to COVID, you can, but you don't need to. The reason we're suggesting that you don't subcategorize all of that is because there is a report that's due. The first one is due April 30th. I'm kind of jumping ahead a minute, but we can circle back. On April 30th, the town will have to submit a report through a system that the feds have set up online, to say where you have spent the money so far. And you have to report it in these different categories. So if you only have to report it in one category, that makes life a little easier for the person filling and keeping track of all this
Certainly sounds like it.
than if you have to break it out.
I have one question while you're on the deadline.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we might not get it spent by April 30th.
I
Now,
hope you
can we
don't.
appropriate it?
Okay.
And then, say this is what we have appropriated it for?
Right, so the April 30th report simply is a report to the federal government of if you have spent it, how much you've spent, and where, or how.
Okay.
You are not required to even have spent a single penny. And there are many, many places that haven't spent it yet. They're still trying to figure out what the best thing to do is with it. So let's circle back to that in a minute if I need to further answer a question for you. The process of being able to spend it is particular. It's not complicated, but it's particular. You've received it already. That's the first step. You as a council, if you haven't yet, need to appoint a committee. It can be each of you, the 5 of you collective. It can be people from the community. It can include the town manager, the clerk treasurer. There's no rule as to who should be on the committee, but there has to be a committee. And that
What's the
committee
number?
then
Yeah, I was gonna say, how
Pardon
many
me?
members?
It
How many members?
doesn't matter.
could be a committee of one.
It could be, that
But
might
you
look a little
obviously
funny.
don't want to do that. But
But
it
yeah,
could be.
but-
Committee of 3 or 4.
But the
Okay.
feds have not dictated how many it should
So
be.
we need to have a ARPA committee.
ARPA committee. And that committee then will sit down and put together a plan. Now, there's a big distinction between the plan and the spending approval. What I mean is, the feds require that you create a plan and that council then approves the plan. Once that's done, then council has to appropriate the money. It'll be an additional appropriation, just like you've done with other things. The money is there waiting, and so the DLGF will automatically approve it because the cash balance is there. That additional appropriation then is where the actual funding and spending gets assigned. The plan can be very generic and broad. It can be, we have some capital expenditures such as emergency vehicles. We have capital expenditures such as maybe a building addition. We have a grant program that we'd like to start to assist homeowners or assist businesses that have been hard hit. Very broad. And then as you work through and as a council decide where you want to spend it in particular, you can then assign into the small pieces. The plan, if it's broad enough, can stay in place as you adjust for the different pieces. It can be specific if you want to, but in order to spend the money, the plan has to cover that expenditure. So some places are taking the very broad approach, as I kind of laid out, that capital expenditures for emergency vehicles, an upgrade to some stormwater systems, for example. And then when the council approves the spending, it's a stormwater for whichever street or whichever subdivision. It's 4 police vehicles this year. That's where the particulars can go. That way, as new needs arise, maybe next year you want to buy 4 more police cars. Your plan already says that you're going to buy emergency vehicles. You don't need to do anything else to it. It can just stay exactly how it was.
So just to clarify, with respect to the plan, basically you're going to appropriate, or not appropriate, but your plan is to basically get the plan approved for the entire amount, not just the initial.
You can, but you don't have to. If you want to only right now put a plan together for, say, the first half, the first 2 million, fine, you can.
And we could always just revise that same plan. at a later-
Exactly.
Okay.
You can revise the plan whenever you want to. The committee just simply needs to say, here's our revised plan, and council approves it. We've been suggesting it by resolution only because As we saw with the CARES Act, the rules changed a little bit. You might recall that originally it couldn't be on a lot of public safety payroll. Then later they said make the whole thing. So we think it's just safer if council approves the plan by resolution, and in a public meeting, of course.
They changed the rules since it's started. Now, is there a way they can change the rules and revert back to and limit some of the uses?
No,
'Cause
I
they-
mean,
You
can
know,
the
obviously
feds-
now, at the beginning of it, you had 4 areas that you could spend it on and that was it. Now they pretty much gave it, everything, you can spend it on anything.
Right.
Is there any chance that they can come back and say, no, we're gonna scale back and now you can't do this, this, and this?
The feds, of course, can do anything they want, but the way that what they call the final rule, it's the title that they give it, the way that that's been approved through the process, I cannot imagine it would ever become more restrictive.
Okay.
The entire country is relying on that rule.
That's one thing,
and-
you don't wanna get into where you spent the money and then all of a sudden now, okay, now they cut back, you can't do it, now you gotta pay it back.
Right, they got,
Yeah,
they
no,
wanna
I don't,
claw it back. We don't
I don't
want
think
that.
you have to worry about that.
All right.
Because they've increased to that $10 million and your amount is below that, and so you'll be fine. Before they made that change, we were a little bit concerned that some people might try to pigeonhole spending into one of the other categories outside of lost revenue, and maybe the public health, for example. Is that program or that expenditure really a public health? And there's some definitional problems there. With it all lost revenue, there really aren't. So with the plan approved then, council appropriates the money, as you do with the rest of your budget. To start with, because it has not presently been approved in your 2022 budget, it will be an additional appropriation, advertised, public hearing, just like you've done before. You can appropriate the entire 2 million if you want to, or you can do it in pieces. That's really up to how you want to kind of control the process. The most important thing, and why I said it's particular, is you have to have a plan in place, appropriate the money before you can spend it. So you just has to make sure that you go in that order.
Do you have to be specific about the project that you're going, say we're gonna spend, of the 4 million, we're gonna spend 2 million on roads?
The plan can say roads.
Just call it roads, you don't have to say this road, this road. You
No.
don't have to be like the CBG did.
Right, no, yeah, not that particular. Road improvement,
Okay,
It could be just very broad, but it needs to be
Right.
allocated by amount.
in a category.
yeah, the plan doesn't even have to list amounts of money if you don't want it to. Most places are, just to help give the public some guidance on where it might be spent. They think it's more transparent that way.
So basically, we could just list out the plan.
Sure.
Roads, infrastructure, IT.
Public safety.
Public safety.
Sure.
And that would basically encompass how we want to spend it.
Anywhere we wanna spend it in the town on roads,
Right.
period.
So it sounds like a nice idea would be, so you have this committee and you could have a committee do some real legwork for us and, and have like, grade projects for us, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1 being the best and, and really think through how we want to spend this money. It'd be nice to have a committee that would, vet that out and really have a thoughtful process with this money.
And
put it
we
to work.
have suggested, in most places, for transparency and for the sake of the residents that you serve, open it up to a public meeting here or there. Allow them to give some input somehow so that they feel heard about it a little bit. Some people know that there's money there and they're going to wonder what you're doing with it. Other people have no idea.
Right,
You know, as with all of the, all
And
the
to
daily.
that, to your point, obviously, you got to do the advertising, you got to do the public hearing as part of that appropriations process too.
Yes, later you will, right, yep. So once an appropriation is done, and then that appropriation is when you would get more specific amounts of money for, whichever road project it's gonna be.
You're gonna have to ID them, is that what you're saying?
Well, however it is that you want to control the appropriation within your budget, that's how you would name it.
So in other words, let's just say, for example, let's name the street, we're gonna rebuild this street or repave this street or rebuild it, whatever. So if we went in and just put down a listing of this street, this street, this street, this street, that's it.
That'd be fine, yep.
Okay.
Yep. And that would get into your appropriation. The key timelines, you have to have the plan prepared and in place by the end of '24. So there's no rush tomorrow to finish your plan. But by the end of '24, if you don't have the plan in place, then they'll ask for the money back.
We will make sure that gets done.
The second final deadline is by the end of '26, the money has to be spent.
So 2 years after,
Yeah.
has to be all gone.
Must be spent.
I think really at this point in this juncture, we should, set up a committee and then, obviously, I'm speaking for myself. I don't think all the money needs to go for roads. So, you
I agree with that.
split it up in the categories, public safety gets some, roads get some, water utility gets some.
So maybe what we do is we advertise for a committee, right? We get to people, get some type, a thoughtful, balanced committee, and they could flush out and bring us, what needs to be done, and we can do that in a transparent and open manner, right?
And I don't know,
Thoughtful
would you have
process.
the committee be some of our department heads, town manager?
Probably be a
Yep.
smart choice, yeah.
Yep, and I would bring a couple from outside, some residents as well.
Do we have to have any particular political affiliation like we do on some of our boards and commissions?
No?
Yeah,
Okay.
Republican, I think.
Nope, there's no
Requirement.
requirement, no,
Yeah.
no dictation on that. I was gonna look really quickly. I sent an email to Jerry only because that was in a response. I have some extra good news for you, and I want to make sure I quote it right.
More money?
Oh, that's good news.
Bring it on.
So there were some, believe it or not, there were some towns and cities that did not apply for their money. They didn't want to have to deal with the reporting. They thought the rules were too restrictive.
Right?
Some little tiny places maybe gave up, tens or maybe $100,000, but to them, the bureaucracy of having to report everything back later was just too overwhelming, and they chose not to do it. Some people just flat missed the deadline because they didn't pay attention and didn't have anyone helping watch for them.
Can we apply for
So-
their money?
Well, it's already been decided for you, but yes. So the state just released on Friday that with that unclaimed allotment, it's being divided back out. There was just shy of 800,000 that was not requested in Indiana.
Wow.
The limit is that your ARP receipt, the 4 million that you got, for example, can't be more than 75% of your budget. St. John doesn't come close. Most didn't come close. There's still a lot of room there. And so they divided out that 800,000 between everyone that had applied, and St. John will receive an additional $8,031.39.
Every bit helps.
So, yeah, I mean, not a huge percentage of your original award, but another $8,000. So I don't expect that will happen any further because everyone had to apply already. And again, because that second receipt is automatic, I don't believe that the second distribution will somehow have anything left over. That 8,000 should be coming to the bank account sometime this week or next week. So you should see that fund balance increase by that much. And then the second distribution that you'll receive sometime this summer should be equal to that first check that you received. What else? One thing that we have cautioned various units on is that thought about giving bonuses. First of all, if you were using the premium pay category, which was for those frontline workers with those limitations and all the calculations, you can't call or give just a flat bonus under that category to all of your town employees. Some people were not interactive in the public during that initial COVID emergency. That was meant for either town employees, police, fire type, maybe front end clerk's office people if there was a lot of public interaction still happening, maybe a utility clerk if they received a lot of payments, interaction with the public. But it also could be granted out to various healthcare, ambulance services, frontline nurses, that kind of thing. And so there were some towns and cities that wanted to just give flat bonuses across the board that were not in that frontline area. And that the federal government said is not correct. Can't do it.
Now,
But because it's lost revenue, if for some reason you wanted to do that, meaning give some extra money to your employees, you could, under the lost revenue category. It's a governmental service. Our caution, though, is when this money's gone, it's gone. And we know so often that when employees receive, if it's even told to them, this is a 1 year, we had a little bit of extra money, we wanted to really help you out, we appreciate your service. No matter how many times you tell them, they do come to expect it. And it's human nature. So we just caution you that if that's an area that you want to consider, that when the money's gone, it's gone. And if you don't have room in your budget to kind of replace that, there may be some.
Well, one thing we used it, or we're gonna use it for, is the longevity program that we put in place. Now, let's say, last year, I think we lost just under 200,000 in lost tax receipts. I think it was, the number was either 180,000, somewhere in there, that we lost in property tax revenues. Can we put that into the lost revenue and then use that,
Yeah, you don't even have to correlate.
Because
you're under
that
the
was
10
kind of like the
million.
bridge the gap until the tax rolls, you can get that on the tax rolls to sustain that.
But it's not gonna be extra, Michael, it's gonna be in our total.
Yeah,
You just take a piece out and call it, it's gonna be for this, but you don't get extra money, if that's what you're asking. Yeah, there is no extra money, you get what you get.
If I understand what you're saying is that it's extremely broad. The lost revenue category is extremely broad. Mike, what you're mentioning certainly falls into that, but it's certainly not limited to that, right?
Right.
This is a generic, can be generic or specific.
Yeah, you don't even have to tie in.
Because we didn't get big hits, but we got hits on our property taxes a little bit, and one of our big funds that we fund, like a police car purchases out of, is the Riverboat casinos. Well, they lost big time last
Right,
year,
right.
and that was a big time loss on our Riverboat casino revenues.
But
we
you don't even
get
have to
extra.
tie the 4 million, say 200,000 of it, you don't even have to tie it back to the property. You can just say, because they changed this rule, government services, whatever you as a town council feel is a government service that you need to spend money on, you can use this for. You don't even have to you don't have to connect the dots back to actual lost revenue. That's just what they're calling that category.
In total spending is the number that we've arrived at, regardless of what you call it or how you classify it.
Yeah, right.
Are you helping most of your clients do this reporting, the April 30th reporting, or is that you're assisting most of your clients with
Yes.
that? Okay.
It's quirky. It's very detailed. Once the spending starts to happen, it's a pain in the ass, quite frankly. I'm recorded, right? I shouldn't have said that.
It's a government report,
It's a
isn't it?
pain. It's a it's a federal government report.
Exactly.
It's a typical federal red tape,
Yeah. And
twice
we,
as much
you know,
paperwork as you need stuff.
they want to monitor, and that's good. It's just, there's a lot to it. And it's not, overly complicated. It's just really tedious. Lots of boxes to check. And
How often do you have to report?
well, originally the first deadline was back in October, I think, and then as the feds were realizing there were a lot of questions still and they were making these adjustments, they canceled that first one. So April 1st becomes this first report. For a town like St. John, I believe it is just once a year. for bigger cities and counties that receive the CBDG grants, because of how that's tied in with federal grant funding, they have to do it quarterly. So theirs is set up a little bit differently. But I want to double check. I don't think that they decided there's a 6-month report, but I want to double check that while we're here. But I can look at that while we're still talking. The plan itself doesn't have to look any particular way. Some places have literally set it up as a PowerPoint so that as the public might be at a meeting, you could put it through the screen. And at the end, that just becomes an attachment to the resolution to say this is a plan we're approving. Other places have done it more in a resolution format, maybe with a bulleted point of sections. It can look however you want it to look, as long as there's something there for you to approve.
All right.
That part sounds pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody have any questions?
And again, it's revisable, Joe, whenever. You can always add to it later.
We don't have any.
We don't have to spend that money right away. We got all the way to the end of 2024 to spend it.
No, the end of
Decide.
2026.
No, well, we have, yeah, I misspoke. The start it up to 2024, and we have to all be spent by 2026.
Right.
So
Is
we
there
have
a-
plenty of time to get our thoughts together, and we don't want the money to burn a hole in our pocket.
Right. No, for sure.
Because once it's gone,
And,
it's gone.
You know, we're trending down, and that's great. It's not a bad plan, though, to keep some of that yet in your back pocket, just to make sure that a year
Emergency
from
fund.
now it has gone away. So yeah, definitely don't need to feel like you need to race to get that 4 million all at the beginning planned out.
Is there a percentage split between the 24 spending and the 26 spending? So in other words, if we chose to say appropriate 80% of it by 24 and started spending it right away, we have some projects that we'd like to address more or less tomorrow, and then pocket the rest for a rainy day. As long as it's all gone by 26, not just appropriated, but actually gone,
Actually gone.
we're good.
Actually gone, yeah.
So what is the 24 break? Is there
You
a
just-
reason for it?
Well, it's the 4th year after the original bill was passed. It was passed in March of 21. So 21, 22, 23, 24. They want 4 years that you have it planned out.
Okay.
But they know that there might be reasons that,
I was just curious
You
why
wanna
a
wait
big
to spend.
2-year drag.
yeah.
I know the government does what they want, but it just didn't make a whole lot of sense.
Right. Okay, good. It is just annually. So April 30th, starting this year, is the first report.
2 weeks after tax day.
Right.
Yes.
And then each year after that. Now, this first report, since I guess I'm kind of assuming, but suspecting you may not have any spent then, we still have to do a report, we meaning St. John. That one's much quicker if you haven't spent it yet, because it just says no categories have been used, but there will still be a report due. There's some login requirements with that. They first started using ID.me, which is a kind of a triple authentication. Take this crazy picture of your face to make sure it's really you, because it has to match your driver's license for whoever it is that's going to do the reporting. And then that person can share login information with someone else to actually help get on the system. That became really complicated for a lot of people because it really didn't work all that well. And so there's a second way that they have to verify identity that they're using, another government ID system. You just have to sign up ahead of time. Also, sam.gov is, maybe Joe, you've heard of that before, and I don't know, maybe if town council members you're familiar, but that's a different way that the feds kind of track their grants. And if the town isn't for some reason signed up already, then we just have to get that account set up. It's not complicated, but it just has to be done before you can submit this April 30th report. So sam.gov, there would be an ID number with it. I would think Beth might have that information from the clerk's office, if that's been established already.
I'll find out on that.
Sam.gov will require your EIN number. And again, it has people's login information for it, so. So those are the only kind of two unusual things you might not expect with the report, to have those ready ahead of time.
Thank
So
you.
what else do you wonder? Anything?
Anybody got questions for her while she's here?
I don't. It provides great clarity. I appreciate all the information.
You're
That's
welcome.
great.
Very well
I-
done.
I'm happy to give you my email address. I think you probably have Steve's already too, but feel free to use it. T Hudson,
Say again?
T Hudson, so THUDSON at Sender Dalton, CENDERDALTON.com. How many do I have? Might be one shy. But please feel free to email questions if you have them. And my cell number is on here also in the middle, or the office number. I guess I should have thought about that before I made you write the email address down.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Trista.
I'm sorry, you got my cell number though, right?
I've got your email address. I'm good.
Would it be a good idea could you invest any of this money or put on a side into something where you might get some interest or not? There's not that much money there.
Yeah, you can invest it while you're
already in
waiting
the
to spend
bank.
it.
Yeah.
And they did make some rules on that easier. Originally, the earnings you earned had to go back into a particular spot, and that's, had to
Okay.
account for that differently than the town's normal earnings on interest. That is all gone, thankfully. They made it more simple for that. Interest rates right now aren't that great, but again, if you have a place, a CD or something, it has to be all government approved investing, just like anything else does, but earn a few extra bucks, that's okay. And it can go back into the fund or even your general fund actually now. So,
All right, thank you.
okay.
you.
Nice to meet you all.
Trista, great.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Really appreciate it.
I think at this time, I would like to see a committee formed.
I was thinking the same thing. So we definitely want the town manager on there. Who else do you think would be good to be on there?
Department heads.
Well, so I don't think you want to make it so, you make a committee so big it becomes
Cumbersome,
bogged down.
right.
I was thinking maybe a committee of 5. I think it's just, they'll be effective. I mean, I would yield to 7, 5 to 7. I'd say 5 is a better number, but I'd be open to the suggestion.
I would say 5 is fine.
Yeah.
You don't want too many
No,
minds in there,
too
but I
many
think,
voices,
we
yeah.
need to form the committee. We need to have our, a department head or two on there, especially our town manager.
Yep.
And then I would request that our department heads send, I've gotten some requests here, from the police chief, from the director of public works. I think they need to formally submit their request to the town manager, and then the committee will review it, and
Right.
we'll go from there. And
Right.
one thing, we're gonna have some immediate spending that we're gonna have. I wouldn't consider it long-term, because it's gotta be spent by 2026, so short-term goals that could be accomplished by 2026 would be things that, you want in that.
So do we need to do it like a motion or something to create this committee? And should we specify who we want on there, or
Well, not this moment. We
No, I think
give us a
w-
thought, or at least?
we have 2 weeks till our next council meeting. I think,
we
get the
can
committee.
settle on then, yeah.
Well, yeah, I think what we should,
Thought.
that's probably a better way to do it, is we'll have a list of members for the
We're
board to
pretty much in
consider.
study session
Okay.
tonight,
And then, yeah,
but I would like this, done by the next council meeting. I think that's in 2 weeks,
23rd.
That would be great.
Yeah.
so we can vote on it and
be done
get going with it.
Move it
and-
along, right?
Get rolling, yeah.
Get them to work,
The
right?
sooner we
I don't
get
know,
it.
Wayne, do you have any?
And I think that everybody, all the department heads should put a list to the committee
Right.
as to what they want. Then you sort it out by priority and see where you're gonna get the most bang for your buck. Everybody here, I think, got Bob Davis's email on what he suggested. Like you had the 93rd Avenue from Marquette to Blaine, 2 7-yard dump trucks, stormwater project on North Oakwood, Joliet Street Bridge, which is east of Parkway, where they had that accident. The guy didn't have insurance. That whole cement and Buckman went down it's in the ditch. And then there was some property for a new salt barn.
So I did look at that, and it was, and so I think having that, kind of flushed out in a committee is a better way to do it. But because a lot of, they certainly look like worthwhile projects, but I think a thoughtful,
Well, yeah,
in-depth
but he-
process and not would be better.
That's your wish list. It's
right.
just,
I want to avoid the wish list. Right. Exactly.
When you got married, you had a wish list. Like, I need this, I need that, I want this big house, whatever. And then on 85th Street in the Fairway by Alexander, that's coming up, and that's St. John, the county, and Sheriffville. That's
We have a meeting.
they want to get that going this year.
Soon,
Yeah,
before the season gets too close that we're gonna run out of time.
right.
And we got a meeting this week to.
So that's coming up.
finalize.
But he,
I've already got commitments for the money from the county, and now we're working on Cherville. We should have a commitment by Thursday or Friday as to how much they're going to kick in. And then we'll know what our remaining balance will be. And we gotta get it moving, because it's gonna take a while, and winter will be here again
Right.
before you know it.
All right, well, I think that, from here, get the committee, get it ready for the next council meeting. Also, send out a formal request to all the department heads to put in what they would like, and then I think each councilman should put a project that he has in mind into there, as well.
I think Joe ought to send out the invitation.
We'll send
to
it
get
out.
all
That's a
the
great idea.
input, right, yeah.
Please.
what about your water projects up here, 93rd and 41?
Well, that could be money that's out of the bond money that we've taken, or the,
Yeah, I think we ought to kind of frivolously spend this government money. I think we ought to spend it on projects that need to be addressed. The bond money can take care of everything on 93rd and 41, I believe. I think that would be approved.
well, that would become out of this, your sewer bond,
Right.
water bond that we just passed.
But I'm saying, let's spend this money as extra pocket change, and get things done.
So we'll get our committee going and let them help decide. Should be good.
All right, and
Okay. Yeah, sounds
all
good.
good on that?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Any new business? No new business. I'll move on to reports. Anything from the town council?
Maybe the only thing I had for today, and I think Joe might know about it too, I got a call from our attorney about they are complete with the descriptions of the property for the waterfront district, so that was the bottleneck for our famous entertainment district, so that is complete, and we'll be able to start moving forward.
Okay.
So,
Anything from staff?
does that sound right?
No, I have nothing.
We're gonna, well, I could say one thing about well 9 items gonna be out here on Wednesday, to try and approve the site for well 9, and then we have to get a permit for that. There's gonna be to take that 18-inch line into the building. That's another item permit. So they got them working on that, and if they work on well 8, that's another permit. So it's gonna be time consuming, and we're trying to get all that done so we can get some construction going sometime this year.
Are those permits pricey, Wayne, or not so much?
Well, that first one that we approved was $8,000. I don't know what that second one would be to go into the building at 600 feet. It might be the same. I don't want to speak out of turn, but you have to have it.
Maybe, yeah, I thought, oh, yeah,
Have
I
to have
thought
it,
maybe
yeah.
you knew.
No, I can ask and find out.
Well, it's just, it's shocking sometimes what kind of permit money they charge you.
No permit, no water.
Oh, no, I
Yeah.
totally
So-
understand that, but they kind of stick it to you, and that doesn't seem right, but it is what it is.
Thanks, Wayne.
Thank you.
All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned.
That was great.
Well, that was quick.
That was a good one.
Easy.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm well informed. That was great.